Good afternoon, YouTubers. This is your girl, Deb Chanel, 48's World, coming to you from Atlanta, GA. I just wanted to talk with you guys about um, all the greed that's going around with corporate America and how they're using cheap labor. This video that I'm going to be releasing today on my channel is called Prison Inmates versus Corporate America Greed. And what it's basically touching on is how they're relinquishing everyday jobs that can be done by citizens of our community or our states, but they're not doing that. They're not letting normal, regular citizens that haven't committed a crime or anything of that nature, they're not letting them have the jobs that they're letting the prisoners have. And I feel that is a very um, shameful type of act that they're doing, especially with people being out of jobs now. And some people would take just about anything to like put food on their tables and pay their shelter, house notes, or renting um, shelter for their families or just themselves. It was quite disturbing, but what I did find out about doing some research, um, did you know federal prisons labor produces 100% of its military helmets for war apparel, supplies and equipment. 30%, 36% of that is body armor. They help with the production of store assembly type installations of things. Home appliances, 30%. Headphones, 21%. Microphones, 21%. Speakers, 21%. And office furniture, 21%. The worker supply 98% of the entire market for equipment as assembled services. So basically, they're saying instead of outsourcing it to another country or giving low income people jobs with lesser education than post secondary education, such as you have an associate's, bachelor's, or master's, you just don't have any education or don't have a high school diploma. These particular jobs could be done by those individuals, but instead of giving them to them, they're outsourcing it to prison inmates, and they're paying them from some of my sources that I researched the information from, 90 cents to $4, which comes out to be $20 to $30 a month, which is ridiculous. And I know sometimes, corporations get tax credit by hiring inmates being freshly released out of prison, and that's called the WOTC, which is work release inmate type of program, back into society to reward them for good behavior. But a lot of my credits go to http colon two forward slashes culture critic, spelled KULTUREKRITIC.com, AtlantaBlackStar.com, 12 mainstream corporations that affiliate themselves with prison corporations or prisons institutions, uh, housing their prisoners there for cheap labor. And I have some more web links that I want you to go and check out. But it was kind of disturbing that they would outsource that type of work that can be done by a regular citizen that haven't done any infractions or committed any crimes. They wouldn't give them a chance for those jobs, or even our high schoolers, or just newly people getting out of high school and just trying to make ends meet by going to college, and they want extra money. They're not even being given the opportunity. But even with them just giving the prisoners that type of money that they can probably use on their commissary or on their books to go to the commissary to purchase certain items, it's still kind of minute in a way where it's still not helping them or their families. I mean, it's kind of helping them because they don't have to pay for room, shelter, and I mean, uh, what, shelter, food, or transportation, because they pretty much, or medical, because they have all of that. But if they're still having family outside of prison, they're still suffering. They don't have medical care. They don't have dental care, any of those type of what do you call it, benefits as far as health care. But yet the prisoners are, kind of, getting treated somewhat fair and then somewhat unfair, because cheap labor is still cheap labor. And it's kind of it's a little bit better than the sweatshops they would have over in Japan or China, but it's just still not fair. So basically, I thought it was very interesting because I didn't know a lot of our work was being outsourced to prisoners. I just had the idea that they were being, taken overseas and given into people such as Bangladesh, China, um, Honduras, countries such as that. I didn't know they were just bringing all of those particular services back to the U.S., but they weren't giving them to the U.S. Americans work. They were actually giving them to prisoners that are already being housed for, committing crimes. But cheap labor is cheap labor, and it's still wrong regardless. Because I feel if they're just there in prison, they should just be serving out their time and figuring out what made them do that in the first place. If it was something like committing a murderous act, or some affliction they put on someone else, that got them in prison. But it was just a little bit disheartening, and since I didn't know, I wanted you all to know so y'all can be in the know of what's actually going on and what our government is taking part in and approving behind innocent um, citizens that were not fully aware of how government structure goes on and what they approve and don't approve until something happens, and then it's on news, and then can't really trust too much on news. You got to still do your research and just see how far that rabbit hole goes down and who is basically being a part of that system, or corrupt system, I should say. So take a look at the 3 videos that I have attached to my topic, and just leave your comments in the comment box after reviewing. And always stay vigilant, do your research, stay informed. Bye. Take care.
Hello, everyone. This is Scotty Reed, of course, and I just wanted to take this quick video of Facebook. This is my Facebook page on my timeline, y'all. Everybody knows what a Facebook timeline is. So as I'm, just looking to see what people are sharing, here is this suggested post or a sponsored advertise paid for by this company, Everyday Lifestyles, to who? Facebook. And so what is this company selling? This company is selling bud, it's selling weed, it's selling cannabis, but it's advertised as CBD oil, now legal in the USA. Now, that is true, but I live in the state of North Carolina. Weed ain't legal in the state of North Carolina. So if I was to order some CBD oil or anything that's prohibited in the state of North Carolina, I can be charged with a crime and be facing jail time. But yet this is being promoted to me in North Carolina, where Facebook knows I am. So is Facebook facilitating a crime? Now, don't get me wrong, I ain't got nothing against cannabis, all right. Lots of great uses for that, many benefits, including economic benefits and job creation, but most importantly, to keep people from getting put in prison for using a natural herb remedy, whether they're using it for recreational purposes, spiritual purposes, or for medicinal purposes. People should not be in prison right now because of this, and now it's being promoted through one of the world's largest social networks to listeners. To people who have an account, which is said to be up in the billion, about 1 billion people on Facebook. They say, how many of those are minors? But now, again, I am not against Facebook suggesting this to me. I do read a lot about cannabis prohibition. I do support, legalizing the weed. So I ain't got a problem with Facebook. I'm not coming down on Facebook. I'm just pointing out the legal problems that we're looking here. And here we have perhaps hundreds of thousands of people in prisons, both private, state, and federal prisons, for this right here, this substance right here, a plant, dried up plant, rotting in prison, lives destroyed because, and now it's being, promoted nationally through Facebook. And so Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg is profiting from the weed by accepting their advertisement fee that they paid to promote this weed to me here in North Carolina. Now, this part is for my serious-minded new abolitionists, because we know that slavery still exists under the 13th Amendment, right? And so I saw this Sprint ad, and I was like, well, Sprint uses prison labor, aka slave labor, and it doesn't matter if they're paying those prisoners $2 a day, $4 a day. It doesn't matter. That is not what you get paid to work in a call center at Sprint. How do I know? I used to work at one. You can make anywhere from $5,000 on up to $60,000 just answering phones for Sprint. All right. And so I was like, now, ain't Sprint connected to prison labor? So, prisoners, just because they're getting paid don't mean they ain't slaves, because enslaved Africans pre-1865 got paid wages. Some of them did, and they purchased their freedoms, would come back later, purchase, their family members and whatnot. So just because people getting paid does not mean they are not slaves. If they're getting paid slave wages and they're not getting paid whatever the prevailing wage rate is for the job that they're doing. So, here is an article I want to recommend on Atlantic Black Star. There's been other articles about the companies that are involved in 21st century slavery. There's McDonald's, there's Wendy's, and we're going to find Sprint. There's Walmart, no more shopping at Walmart, no more shopping at Starbucks. And there we go, Sprint. Please, find this article is on AtlanticBlackStar.com. I'll even link to it for everyone. But there's Sprint. Sprint, inmates provide telecommunication services. Inmates are used in call centers. I used to work in a call center doing troubleshooting for Sprint, making about $33,000 a year. They are not paying those prisoners no $33,000 a year, $25,000 a year, whatever the lowest salary is for a Sprint employee working in a call center. Those prisoners aren't being paid that. So that's slave labor. You're paying them slave wages. So going back to Facebook, since we see this Sprint ad, when we see ads on Facebook or any social media network, then we want to click on the X box. We don't ever want to see those ads on our timeline or when we're visiting these social networks. So on Facebook, you say, I don't want, I'm going to click on hide all from shopsprint.com. We will try not to show you this ad again. Why did you hide it? Okay. Let's say it's offensive. That doesn't fit, so we'll say something else. Okay, we'll say something else. I thought it was going to allow me to put in there why. Okay, it's not relevant to me. Where does it allow me, if I can get them some feedback of why I don't want to see this ad? Because I want to tell them, because it's slavery. They use it. It's illegal or violent. I disagree with it. And looks like the ad's gone. Okay, it's gone. All right, so I don't ever want to see. That's what new abolitionists should do. So Facebook, if y'all want to know why I'm blocking Sprint ads, McDonald ads, let's see, Verizon wireless ads. Who else is on here? Let's go through the list. Victoria's Secrets ads, Fidelity Investments. Check your 401k. You might want to dump that because they investing in slavery. Let's see. J.C. Penney, American Airlines. So again, here's the article. 12 mainstream corporations benefiting from the prison industrial complex. So when you see those ads on Facebook, let's see if I see any more ads like that. We'll keep the weed ads, all right? I ain't got a problem with that because it shouldn't be illegal, all right? And it generates jobs, good for the economy, save taxpayers money. I'm not seeing no ads. Let me see if I go back again to my timeline. I want to see if any of these other prison slavery companies show up in my timeline. So they probably ain't gonna show me no more ads right now, but that's what you do. That's how you send a message. If you're able to tell them why, then tell them why. Tell them you not and oh my God, here is Charles Barkley saying he doesn't know if slavery was really all that bad. So we'll end on that right there before I say something really anti-black about Charles being anti-black, and I'll end this video here. So yeah, block all ads from the prison enslavers. The corporations don't do business there no more. Now you know. Now you know. McDonald's, we'll go through it one more time. Wendy's. Who else we got on here? Walmart. Starbucks, coffee. So for all y'all that be shopping, running up in Walmart, know that probably you got a family member or two or three that's in prison right now, and somehow Walmart is profiting off of them, using them as prison labor. The Starbucks, this is the only way that you can directly, not the only way, but one of the ways you can directly impact prison slavery. Sprint, Verizon, block all of these ads. Victoria's Secret, Fidelity Investments, for those that got 401ks, get rid of them. And J.C. Penney and American Airlines. So it's only going to change if people make it change. So let's impact them economically. And if we see their ads on social media, if we're on Twitter, if we're on Facebook, let's block those ads. And the reason why is we don't support slavery. And let's also boycott Charles Barkley as well. Let's also boycott any products that he's pushing, and Shaq as well, who said that he always side with law enforcement officers. If y'all want to continue this economic economic protest of this system, then we have to send a message to the system. That's the least that you can do. You know, that's a form of passive resistance, but it's resistance nonetheless. Peace and blessings. Support independent black media.
The American Legislative Exchange Council, also known as ALEC, is snatching up public employees' jobs, and they're also hurting small businesses. And the way that they're doing that is they are transferring jobs over to prison laborers.
Oh, fantastic, because you know, we weren't close enough to slave labor. Let's just get right to it, right?
This is literally modern version of slave labor. What they're doing is they are having prisoners, okay, do the work that public employees are doing now, except prisoners do it for free, or they do it for like 20 cents an hour.
Yeah, let's be fair now. 20 cents an hour. I mean, isn't that a livable wage? They're in prison anyway. What difference does it make? They have to do it. We can force them to do it. Who else did we used to force to do labor? Let me try to remember, okay? And they say, but hey, out of the goodness of our heart, we're providing shelter for them in prison. And that's part of their compensation.
No, but you know what they're saying? They're saying, oh, well, you know, these people are in prison. Tax dollars are helping to fund them, so they're in prison. Doesn't it make sense to make them work and pay off their debt? Like, that's the way that they try to sell it. But it's a vicious cycle. Let me explain to you how they do this. So what ALEC does is it works with state legislators to pass extremely tough on crime legislation. Okay, so they are in favor of the drug war. They worked with state legislators in Arizona to pass SB 1070. And what they want to do is they want to have more and more people imprisoned, right? So these private prisons make a huge profit off of that. Now, what happens after that? Since so many people are in jail, states accumulate huge deficits, right? So since they have these deficits, what do they need to do? They need to find a way to pay for it. And a good way to save money is to stop paying public employees and have these prisoners do the same jobs for free or essentially no money at all, like 20 cents to $1 an hour.
So this is not speculation. You can actually trace the legislation. It comes from this business lobby, and it goes straight to Republican lawmakers, and then it becomes acts. It's traced in a series of articles in The Nation, in these times, and the list goes on and on. It's very well documented. Two of the biggest groups in this group, in ALEC, are Corrections Corporation of America and the GEO Group. They're formerly known as Wackenhut Corrections. They're the two largest private prison companies in the country. And what they do is they do things like the Prison Industries Act, and they have the Republicans pass it. So what it does is it creates more and more prisons for these private prisoners for these private prisons. For example, they wrote SB 1070 in Arizona, the one that would make it illegal not to have your papers with you.
Right.
You know, the famous case in Arizona where they're going to ask everybody for their papers, and of course these two corporations will benefit greatly from it because you'll have much more prisoners, and they're the ones who wrote it. So now this is a great crime basically in our system, because our system has been so corrupted that these private companies simply buy the politicians, they get them to pass any laws that they like, they create more prisoners, and then they turn around, profit off the prisoners, and then make them do nearly slave labor and profit off of that as well.
Just to give you some more information on this, right now in Arizona, what they're trying to do is build more fences along the border, right? And one way that they're doing that is they're having prisoners do it for free. Right. Now, just think about that for a second, okay? Legislators in Arizona passed SB 1070, so Mexicans get imprisoned, and then those same Mexicans are used to build fences for the borders for virtually no money.
Well, it's, you know, it's brilliant in its depravity. And, you know, by the way, on drug laws, of course, these companies and ALEC is pushing for tougher and tougher drug laws. Why? They need more prisoners for their private prisons, and they're for their companies that continue to make money. By the way, one of the things that gets hurt, small businesses.
Absolutely.
Like some print shops, for example, that are now the prison companies are competing with are getting run out of business in states like Florida. Because they're small business. They can't keep up with this large business, which has bought the government and allowed them to have an advantage where their workers get paid 20 cents an hour. How in the world could you compete with that? We're worried about competing with China? Are you kidding me? You can't compete with the prison companies.
And that's another thing that I found fascinating. ALEC's response to all of this is what? At least we're not outsourcing jobs.
Yeah, well, they're literally insourcing them. They put them inside prisons where they can't move at all and make them work for them. No, I mean, this is capitalism gone wrong. This is the worst parts of capitalism on steroids. Look, this can be prevented. It doesn't mean capitalism is wrong. The main thing you have to prevent is corporations buying politicians. If you let them purchase politicians, of course they will rig all the rules completely in their favor, including getting nearly free labor and destroying all other businesses. See, it doesn't help capitalism. Corporatism, once corporations are born, their job is to kill their parents, which is capitalism, because they hate free markets. They don't want competition. They want to destroy the competition. So the minute they're hatched, if you allow them to buy politicians, they use the politicians to kill off all their competitors, especially small businesses. And then we wonder, why do we have high unemployment? One, you killed the small businesses, and two, you're hiring prisoners at 20 cents an hour. Why would anybody else hire regular Americans at real wages?
Exactly.
No, look, the more you look into this group, ALEC, the more you see that it is at the heart of the beast.
Between 1970 and 2005, the US's prison population grew by a massive 700%, far outpacing both population growth and crime rates. Today, it's got to the stage where America is home to 5% of the world's population, but a quarter of the world's prisoners. And not only does America have the highest imprisonment rates of any country in the entire world, but it also has the highest rate of youth incarceration. Over 130,000 juveniles are detained in the US every year, and on any given day there are more than 70,000 youths in detention. But the biggest winners of this mass incarceration haven't been the American public, but the private prison companies who are making giant profits out of people being in jail. According to the American Civil Liberties Union, in 2010, the two largest prison companies alone received nearly $3 billion in revenue, while their top executives each received annual compensation packages worth more than $3 million. Private prisons didn't really exist before the early 1980s, when US states and the federal government needed a solution to the overcrowding in public prisons. But between 1990 and 2009, the number of people in private prisons increased by a massive 1,600%. And the business model of these private prison companies essentially depends on locking more and more people up. The biggest of the US's private prison companies is the Corrections Corporation of America, otherwise known as the CCA. In its 2010 annual report to shareholders, the CCA stated, "The demand for our facilities and services could be adversely affected by the relaxation of enforcement efforts, leniency in conviction or parole standards and sentencing practices, or through the decriminalization of certain activities that are currently proscribed by our criminal laws." The CCA seems to be particularly concerned about the decriminalisation of drug use and any potential changes to immigration laws. For instance, any changes with respect to drugs and controlled substances or illegal immigration could affect the number of persons arrested, convicted and sentenced, thereby potentially reducing demand for correctional facilities to house them. Because of these concerns, private prison companies spend a lot of money on lobbying politicians. According to analysis by the Associated Press, between 2002 and 2012, the CCA, along with the US's second and third largest private prison companies, Geo Group Inc. and Management and Training Corporation, otherwise known as MTC, spent around $45 million on lobbying state and federal governments between them. And in addition to lobbying, these three companies also pour hundreds of thousands of dollars every year into the election campaigns of governors, state legislators and judges. And a report by the National Institute on Money in State Politics revealed that between 2003 and 2011, the CCA alone hired 199 lobbyists in 32 states, while GEO hired 72 lobbyists in 17 states. Worryingly, private prisons in America have been linked to numerous cases of violence and poor conditions. This CCTV video shows a brutal beating of 24-year-old Hani Elebed by another inmate at the CCA-run Idaho Correctional Center in January 2010. Elebed was left with permanent brain damage from the attack and later died in 2012, though it was unclear whether his death was related to the injuries he sustained in prison. Following the attack on Elebed, the American Civil Liberties Union filed a lawsuit against the CCA on behalf of a number of inmates at the centre. The inmates claimed that violence at the centre was so widespread they called it Gladiator School, and that understaffing and mismanagement by CCA officials was contributing to the violence rate. The CCA denied these claims, but agreed to a settlement in which they were instructed to carry out operational changes and increase staffing levels. However, more than 2 years later, in September 2013, a federal judge found the CCA in contempt of court for violating this settlement. And then the following month, the CCA announced that it would be leaving Idaho. The ACLU has also filed a lawsuit against the state of Mississippi over conditions at the East Mississippi Correctional Facility. Donald Weeks is a former prisoner at the facility, which was run by GEO until July 2012 and is now run by MTC.
It was run by GEO the first 2 months that I was there. Just dirty, nasty, unsanitary conditions. I mean, People get stabbed in there, they're bleeding, or they get in a fight and they're bleeding. They don't give no cleaning chemicals to clean the place up or nothing. The sewer kept backing up in the zones, the toilets kept stopping up. The stench was so bad in there, I couldn't eat anymore.
A spokesperson for MTC says that conditions have significantly improved since the company took over from GEO, but the ACLU disputes this. This track record is all the more worrying because many of those in private prisons are some of the most vulnerable people in the system. Nearly 40% of all detained juveniles are committed to private facilities, while nearly half of all immigrant detainees are now held by private companies. And to be clear, most immigrant detainees are being held while waiting to have their cases decided in court, not serving time for a crime they've been convicted of committing. In 2012, a federal judge transferred all prisoners out of the formerly GEO-managed Walnut Grove Youth Correctional Facility in Mississippi, after finding it to be a picture of such horror as should be unrealized anywhere in the civilized world. Prison staff had sex with imprisoned youths in what investigators called among the worst we've seen in any facility in the nation. According to GEO, the abuses documented occurred before the company had taken over Walnut Grove in late 2010, but this is disputed by the US Justice Department. This map, produced by the ACLU following a Freedom of Information request, also shows allegations of sexual abuse of detainees since 2007 at immigration detention facilities across the US. In total, there have been nearly 200 reports of sexual abuse during this time, but the ACLU believes that this is just the tip of the iceberg and that many other cases have gone unreported. Unfortunately for the private prison companies, however, crime rates in the US have actually been on the decrease for the past decades, and so they've been resorting to more aggressive tactics to make money. A 2013 report from the In the Public Interest Resource Centre revealed that some companies have been signing contracts with states that contain clauses guaranteeing high prison occupancy rates. Some contracts require 90 to 100% occupancy. This means that if the private prisons in question aren't filled to the agreed capacity, then either the state has to find more people to put in those prisons or pay the company for the unused beds. And 3 companies in Pennsylvania even resorted to bribing officials to get beds in their facilities filled. In August 2011, former Luzerne County Judge Mark Chivarella Jr. was sentenced to 28 years in prison after sending children to detention centers owned by these companies in return for illegal payments amounting to millions of dollars. Some of those he sentenced were as young as 10 years old. And now, campaign groups like the ACLU and Brave New Foundation fear that private prison companies could be set to profit from federal immigration reform. The US House Judiciary Committee has passed the SAFE Act, which, if turned into law, would turn millions of undocumented immigrants into criminals overnight and make not having papers punishable by months or even years in US prisons. But if business starts to go bad for the private prison companies in the US, then there's always the rest of the world. The UK currently has a 106% prison occupancy rate, creating an opportunity for private prison companies to jump in as they did in the US in the 1980s, while Australia's controversial immigration detention system is now operated entirely by private companies. And last year, GEO saw 14% of its revenues coming from international contracts.